Hey there, dear viewers. Welcome to Obsessed with Werewolves. I'm so glad you're here because I know you, like me, have a passion for all things werewolf. From their captivating tales to their mysterious nature, we're going to explore it all. So, let's dive right in and satisfy our obsession together. Chapter 11. Will had been gone a week with no response. It worried Harley. As she went through her days, anxious thoughts peppered her mind. What could really be happening to State's over? A rogue cleanup can't take this long. Not with the other hunters this alpha called in. The whole situation made her uneasy. When she had asked about it, Alpha Mark gave her no response. We'll share his information when it is necessary. Just know he's alive and okay. Alpha Mark had said. He might have well said, let the adults handle it. Which, in a way, she understood. Harley was not a shifter wolf. She was not a high-ranking pack member. She was no one, and that meant she would never be important enough to be in the loop. And so, whenever she wasn't desperately trying to keep her worried mind off of Will by falling into book worlds, she threw herself deep into training. Cam took over instructor duty. He did a great job, but he wasn't Will. He stuck to the same exercises Will had, and added a few more when he realized her body had adjusted to the workload and she needed more of a push. Surprisingly, as a trainer, Cam barely spoke a word. Will, on the other hand, was loud. During warm-ups or just general exercises, Will had a tendency to yell, "Come on, Harley," or "This is where you get the most benefit, Harley." From Cam, nothing. No shouting, no clapping, no smack talk. She didn't know how much she valued Will pushing her to do better until it was gone. She'd finished her last lap and fell rather than sag round when Cam ambled over. "Good job today, Harley." "Thanks, Cam." Harley peered up at him, squinting against the bright morning sun. She began her stretches, slowly, as Will always urged her to be careful. According to Will, stretching was important, but she could easily pull a muscle if she stretched too far. The gentle rush of wind through the trees filled the silence. Cam rested against a nearby tree while she finished up. "You're quiet," Cam spoke. I could say the same. Upon first meeting Cam, she got an impression of an easygoing, hard-working wolf who was generous with his humor. The Cam she dealt with over the past couple of days had been subdued and serious. At least Harley was known for being reserved. Cam had stepped into a whole other skin. Definitely one less flexible. She shrugged and pulled one leg in while reaching for the other in a hamstring stretch. "I don't have anything to say. And normally I'm okay with that. You're naturally a quiet person. But I can see the bags under your eyes. When was the last time you got a full night's sleep?" Harley snorted. Cam was right on the money. She hadn't been able to sleep at all the past couple of nights. Her dreams were so vivid she could hear the deep, rumbling growls of wolves fighting, and feel the sharp stab of claws digging into her stomach. Helpless as the pull of those razor claws yanked her insides from her body, gave a chill as all her blood seeped into the brisk, unforgiving ground. "Harley," she blinked. In the distance, birds chirped and twittered, still welcoming in the morning. The late May sun had done a nice job warming up the meadow. She wasn't cold. With one swipe of her hand, she could tell her stomach hadn't been gouged out. "Does a rogue hunt usually take this long?" Cam ran long fingers through his dark blonde hair. "Sometimes, if the wolf is tricky enough. Does it ever get any easier?" He stared at her then, weighing something in his mind. His green eyes were striking, in the way that they matched the small patches of grass popping up throughout the meadow. She didn't know too many people with green eyes like that. No, it doesn't. Wolves will always have enemies, humans who know too much and are afraid, so they strike out. or other wolves who greedily fight for power and control, or even wolves who lose all power and control and are so lost in the cage of their mind that they go feral. Kim took a breath and looked at the sky, resignation draping over his features. There will always be an issue for Will to deal with, always something ready to tear him to shreds. Her brain, being the nice, considerate entity, decided to feed her flash images of a four-and wolf tearing Will apart, and she unwillingly jerked back at the similarity of the scene and the dreams she'd been having. She put her hand to the dirt and scraped it up with her fingernails. Feel the earth. You are here. You are in the present. And then finally, you are safe. Safe. Because people like Will went out to fight for her. He's a protector. Harley wiped her dirty hand on her basketball shorts. Cam chuckled humorlessly. That guy was born a protector. Some wolves just are. He settled back then and closed his eyes, basking in the small sliver of golden light peeking through the trees. His breath came out slowly, and Harley watched as the tension started to drain out of him. First in his shoulders, then down his arms, his neck, his torso. If his foot wasn't swaying to some imaginary beat, she'd have thought he fell asleep. She used that moment to really look at him. His hair had been swept back, as if he had run a comb through it and let the locks rest where they may. He had a strong jaw, but not so much it dominated over the rest of his features. With the broad shoulders and muscles threading through his frame, she had no doubt he'd make some woman a fine mate someday. A mate. Harley wished she could have one of those. Contrary to popular belief, wolves didn't wake up one morning, see their other half on the street, and for man instantaneous bond of love. No, they fell in love the way most humans do, through hard work, and lots of time spent together. A wolf had to really be sure that when they took a mate, that was who they wanted to spend their life with. Wolves mate for life. But when wolves formed a bond and decided to become mates, the connection was something magical. Not starry-eyed, dreamy magical, but honest, too, god magic. The bond formed between mates literally connected the two. Similar to the packweb bond, a mate bond could share feelings between the two wolves, but also sentences. In the rarest case, wolves have been said to be able to share past memories. Wolves could mate with humans, but the bond never formed. And while packs didn't outright shun a human living in a pack, there usually was unease, or sense of otherness. Wolves were primal creatures, ruled mostly by instinct, and it took a lot to ignore the instinct that came with humans. They were not wolves, outsiders. Harley didn't have a wolf, at least, not a physical one. She didn't get any qualities wolves got: speed, strength, increased senses. It made sense then that she wouldn't get the bond between mates either. Maybe, but unlikely. Subjecting someone to maybe S and what ifs would not be fair to Wolf deciding to make her his mate. Cam, though, she could see him being a wonderful mate. He was friendly, protective, had a sense of humor. He'd be right for a loving she-wolf. The second she'd finished her stretches, Cam's eyes popped open, ready to go. I think Natalie was cooking up some grilled cheeses for lunch. Maybe we can steal a few before the masses come. Her watch said lunchtime had a while yet. Cam, it's only 10. He lifted his shoulders. By the time we get back it'll be 10:30. That's prime grilled cheese in time. Are you going to pass up a quality grilled cheese? She was hungry, but a branch snapped from the other side of the meadow. Harley's entire body flipped, sudden alarm going through each of her senses. Within seconds, Cam whirled, pulled her behind him, and got into a fighting stance. Cam, they were near the edge of the territory. Not at the edge, no. But close enough that if anything got past the patrols, I shot down her spine. Across the meadow, a bush rustled. A low growl. Her heartbeat thrashed. It was the same. The snap of a twig, the bright sun, her guard down, all the same. She clutched at her butterfly necklace. "Harley, I'm going to distract him," Cam barely muttered. "You go get help." He pushed his back close enough to her front that she gripped his blue shirt with tight fingers. She wouldn't let go. Couldn't let go. "I'm not leaving you." As much as her body told her to run, despite her weakening muscles and the darkness coating the edge of her vision, she would not leave him. She'd run last time, and look what happened. A bush moved, then parted. A full-on wolf crept from hiding, his muzzle down. Teeth glinted against the sun, eyes sharp and focused. "Harley, I'm not leaving you." The tan and white wolf approached slowly, intent clear. This wolf wouldn't let them go, not alive. A slow, slinking walk, a narrowed gaze. This was a hunter. She forced herself to look at its eyes, to see the focus, but behind that alertness, nothing. This wolf was feral. How did it get past the patrols? Kim stepped back, and Harley mimicked him. He could go. He could run. He had the speed, the strength to fight his way free. Harley had nothing. She was trapped, and painfully human. In the distance, a single wolf howl echoed across the sky. Birds scattered back up was coming. The patrols had noticed the breach. The wolf's ears perked. He tilted his head to the side, no doubt catching something Harley couldn't, like the rhythm of wolf paws pounding on the dirt in the distance. Then he shook his head and the darkness faded from his eyes, replaced with confusion. Lost. This wolf had lost himself. He took a few skittering steps backward. His hide bumped into a large, unforgiving tree. The wolf took one more look at Cam and Harley, and ran. Chapter 12. No one caught the feral wolf. The patrols had chased it past the territory lines, but had been too hesitant to go further for fear of leaving the territory wide open. They had no choice but to let it scamper off, free to infiltrate another territory. Alpha Mark had been infuriated. Even Harley's less sensitive ears caught the yelling through the walls during the meeting that night. The wolf simply ran off and disappeared. The next morning, while the pack dealt with upping patrols and security, Harley locked herself in her bedroom. The incident with the wolf had reminded her too much of all she'd lost. She instead curled up in her bed and began her next romance book. Cam had let her off training this morning, which was fortunate because it saved her from having to get on her knees and beg him not to make her go out there again. The air conditioning kicked on when the heat of the day seeped into the air and made the outside rather damp and sticky. Though she liked the refreshing nature of air conditioning, she hadn't been able to stand it as long as she'd have liked. She didn't run as warm as the wolves. Since she wasn't yet a permanent fixture in the pack house, mentioning for someone to turn down the air was not an option. Asking them to turn down the air in their own home would be rude. Instead, she opened her single window to let heat in and sat at the edge of the bed so that she could peer out the window at random intervals. The wind was strong today, and rustled the trees in a way that soothed Harley. Along with the songs of the birds and the whirl of a lawn mower, the outside world produced wonderful normal music. She needed to hear everyday sounds to remind herself of where she was. In the pack house. Safe. Around noon, a light rap on the door, her glancing up in surprise. She told Bailey and Kim earlier that she'd rather not be bothered today. Should she just ignore and hope they go away? No, Harley, you're a new part of the pack. You need to be present and polite. Come in. We'll stalk through the door, stopping her thoughts and catching her by surprise. When did he get back? How did she not hear the hustle and bustle of pack members excited for his return like last time? Did he just get back? Her eyes started to take in his features, his frame. No major outside injuries, at least none she could easily detect. She didn't have time to look at much else because he swept up and reached forward to tilt her chin back, He nudged her head left, then right, bewildered by his sudden presence. She followed along. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Are you okay?" Will stepped back and traced her body with his eyes all the way down to her bare toes. "Harley?" He said her name on a strange half growl, a warning. Why did he care so much? "I'm okay." She couldn't help but reach out to grab his hand. It was warm and leathery, like the bottom of her feet. Workers' hands. Fighting hands. "How are you? How was your trip?" She patted the bed for him to sit down, not even caring that they might not be at this level of friendship yet. This sharing details and feelings kind of friendship. Will's eyes were focused, evaluating, as if he was gauging her health more than paying attention to the conversation. Especially as he replied, "Good. Successful." He'd been sent out to find rogues and ferals. Ferals like the one she faced in the meadow yesterday morning. She tried her best to ignore the fear and unease that crawled through her veins like ivy. Icy, paralyzing. Ivy she didn't want to know much about any rogues. Yet, playing ignorant seemed like a bad idea. Being blind to the ways of the world could sometimes do more damage than good. Like living at the very edge of the territory and not knowing that a small pack of rogues were tearing through neighboring territories. "Did you get them?" Will frowned, his eyebrows together. "I wasn't sent there to take out rogues. Just investigate a situation." But why couldn't the closer packs do that? Why did they have to bring in a rogue hunter to investigate? It was a big group. The alphas in the neighboring packs brought in hunters just in case something went wrong. That almost never happened. Alphas didn't send out for help for investigations. Packs assess the situation on their own and then call in for help when necessary. Sometimes even when the situation was bad. Help wasn't called. Alphas had a lot of pride. Calling for help, though it sounded ridiculous to Harley, was seen as weak by other alphas. As leaders, alphas were responsible for keeping their members safe. It was what made packs a unit. The alpha of a pack, as the strongest wolf, provided a safe environment for each wolfen in return, got financial support, loyalty, and even love. Every wolf depended on love. Because wolves ran so heavily on emotions and physical affection, it was vital for them to be around family. Pack. Familiarity. It was ingrained in wolves to be a unit, to love each other. Which was why rogues weren't as prevalent. Though it was rare, even rogues sometimes formed a pack for that pack unity. Harley never quite felt that unending need for unity, but she did understand loneliness. Understood the deep, cold ache that settled in your chest. Understood the numbness that threatened to disconnect you from the world. She'd do a lot to escape that feeling. Which was why every day, she'd begun to thank the heavens for Bailey, Cam, and Will. But she was grateful to them for refusing to let her lock herself in her bedroom and never come out. "Did you find anything out?" She picked at a stray thread in her comforter. "Not particularly," he admitted, and rubbed a hand down his face. "It's like poking a lion with a stick. We were just trying to feel out the danger." Her face scrunched. "I'm not an expert, but I don't think it's safe to poke a lion with a stick." Amusement danced in his eyes, but his expression remained stoic. "It's not." A small stone dropped in her stomach. "You don't have to go back. Do you?" "No, not yet." He shifted on the bed, sitting cross-legged. "You going to tell me about the visit you had yesterday?" To her dismay, the blood drained from her face. She did not want to talk about the rogue. Not when the fear still tight in her chest and affected her breathing. Especially not when Will would be able to see how it still haunted her. She'd already had a panic attack in front of him. He didn't need to see just how much the past mingled in her life. "I thought Alpha Mark filled you in." That was the first thing she had him promise, that he'd be the one to tell the people who needed to know about the incident. It was why she'd sat in his office for an hour yesterday, going through any and every detail. "I want you to fill me in." She didn't have to tell him. If she were stubborn enough, she'd tell him to go back to Alpha Mark and not say another word. She didn't have to relive the rogue, and the rogues before him. Didn't have to hear the loud bang, feel it slice through her chest as her home burst apart and she fell and fell. But what was Matthias' best friend? He was her closest tether to her family. Aunt Tracy and Uncle Eric never bothered to treat her like a blood relative. That Will, even with the small amount of time she'd been here, had treated her more like family than her actual family. In a weird way, she almost felt like she owed it to him. Cam was running through exercises with me and it came out from one of the bushes. She finally said. She couldn't look at him, afraid his expression would somehow bury her in emotions, and instead focused on a spot near where the white wall met the carpet. It just kind of looked at us and then ran. What did it look like? Tan white. Most shifters were some combination of tan, white, gray, or brown. It was rare to find a completely dark wolf or pure white wolf around here. Maybe up more in the north, but not here. Will adjusted his position, getting more comfortable, and Harley dared to look up at him. He was far away, his eyes distant, thinking. Cam didn't recognize him. She shook her head no. It had the feel of a rogue. You know. Pack wolves have a mission. They always know where they are and where they need to be. This guy seemed lost. His eyes shot to her then, and his lips hinted at a smile. Lost. She shrugged. The wolf was intent at first, but then he did seem lost. Confused. Like he didn't know where he was, or what he was doing. Maybe he'd begun to turn feral. Was that how the process worked? She'd always thought it was a quick, snap transition, like the wolf decided to take over and leave the human aspect behind. Not a slow descent into madness. And what about Cam? What did Cam do? He went on the fence. She told him, maybe that's why it's kittered off. A cloud passed over his face then, and he stood up. Maybe, he said, though the word was empty. I need to go finish up some paperwork. He was leaving. A part of her hated the thought of him going. Another part felt relived. She focused on the second part. Okay. Before he left, he rubbed a hand on the top of her head. Just like an older brother. Leave this room sometime today. All right. A command. Yeah. She muttered, scowling internally. She'd do whatever she wanted today. After all, it was her day off. Chapter 13. After leaving Harley in the safety of her bedroom, Will set off to find Cam, his gait long and filled with purpose. He had a few questions for his friend along with some strong points he wanted to make about what happened with him and Harley. In such a short conversation, he'd made a few discoveries about his late best friend's sister. Her fear was still present, obviously, with the way she tensed any time she discussed rogues. He didn't blame her. A traumatic situation, especially at such a young age, would have an effect on anyone. It would take a while for her to move past it, but he was willing to be there for her. He only wished she would accept him more, either physically or socially. Will could tell that touch made Harley somewhat uncomfortable, whether she realized it or not. She didn't seek it out, not in the way his pack mates did, and she tended to distance herself. He'd slowly started to introduce her to contact as the days passed, so she'd get used to it for the pack. It had to be something with her latency. As a wolf, he cherished little touches here or there, a brush on the arm, a hug. It all reminded his wolf of the connection he had with his pack mates. He took comfort in it. Harley, on the other hand, seemed so alone. Earlier when she'd taken his hand, albeit very briefly, his wolf had been elated at the contact. Maybe he'd started to get somewhere. Maybe living with the pack helped. Oh, she was Latent. Harley knew a lot more about wolves than she realized. It made him happy to know her upbringing had at least exposed her enough to pack living that she knew the culture of shifters. And she got more from her senses than she knew. The rogue looked lost. No regular human would be able to take a glance at a wolf, especially not a strange wolf, and get a feel for its mental state. Cam sat in a recliner in the den, watching highlights from this year's hockey playoffs. Lucky for Will, the room was empty except for Cam, and tucked far enough into a corner of the house that there'd be less foot traffic. Will snatched up the remote and clicked off the TV. Hey, Cam whirled around. The anger suddenly burst from his chest in a fierce explosion. Are you out of your mind? What the hell is your problem? Cam snapped the recliner legs down and got up. I have no problem, he snapped out. Except for the fact that you somehow can't manage to do the one thing I asked you to. Well, hello to you two. Will, I'm so glad to have you back. He rolled his eyes. I've been great. Thanks for asking. Cut the crap. Cam threw his hands up in the air. I'll cut the crap if you take a second to calm down and tell me what the hell bit you in the ass this morning. How did you not know it was there? Will asked through gritted teeth. It should not have been able to sneak up on you. Cam knew exactly what he meant, some of the color leaving his cheeks. I made a mistake. This is what training is for. Will's anger, once unleashed, had become a powerful wave that plowed over him. He let it swallow him. Your reaction time was slow, your response wrong for the situation, and you do not even have information for us to work with. Now, hold on a second. That wolf cut and ran. The whole situation unraveled in less than 2 minutes. That's not good enough. Will might actually throttle his closest friend. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't have alpha marks and you through entry-level training again. Because it was one mistake. Cam sputtered. Disbelief lit his eyes. Because that wolf moved eerily quiet for a rogue. If you were there, I wasn't. And you're lucky I'm just hearing about it now. Cam shook his head. I don't understand why you're so understanding clicked. It's because of Harley. You put her in danger. I told her to run the second the wolf showed. Cam defended, his tone strong, confident now. A humorless smile curved his mouth. She's got a stubborn streak. That one dug her feet right in and stayed. That was unacceptable. You had a responsibility to get the civilian out of the danger zone. That's the first rule. Can you cause a distraction and get the innocents to safety? You know that. How am I supposed to leave now? He went on, when I'm not sure you'll be able to do your job and keep pack members safe. Cam stepped forward. His hollow smile wiped off. He jabbed a finger at Will. You realize that this situation was different. I am a good fighter. You can trust that, if nothing else. The anger had finally begun to drain out of him, and Will, now exhausted, sighed. You're right. I'm sorry. Cam's shoulders relaxed. That wolf was tricky, man and bizarre. It just took off. How many rogues have you encountered that flee mid-hunt? None. An animal on the hunt never broke focus, never gave up. They played games and could patiently wait for hours for the prey to get distracted and then surged forward for the attack. But turn tail and run. Never. Cam sat back down and flicked on the TV. Will thought about joining him, but his feet remained frozen on the carpet. His outburst had taken him too much by surprise. He was always the 3 C's. Cool, calm, collected. So what the hell was that? Cam turned up the volume and pushed the legs of the recliner back up. You know, she was pretty worried about you this last week. His heart thudded. He'd been pretty worried about her too. Harley had plagued his mind the whole week. He'd been unable to give his complete focus because the entire time there'd been a little part of his brain wondering what she was doing, who she was with, if she thought about him as much as he did her. Enough. That's Matthias, the little sister. Keep her safe. Well, had a responsibility to keep her safe. For Matthias, of course. Just for Matthias. He'd never gotten that mad at Cam before. He rarely got angry at Cam. But the thought of Harley getting hurt, especially by another rogue, set his insides ablaze. She'd been hurt before, almost irreparably, by rogues. He could still see the mental damage, the internal scars, any time she mentioned a rogue. And that panic attack she'd had in the training meadow. He couldn't imagine losing his parents. The thought alone threatened to send him on a downward spiral, and he wasn't on the best of terms with them. To be a child, a dependent, and lose your whole family in one day, 1 hour, would be like having your entire world ripped away. She was getting past it. Anyone could see that. Though everyone could also see she still had some work to do. Did she know her face was so expressive? She tried to hide it behind a cool mask of semi-indifference, but he caught the distance in her eyes. Like she was there but not there. And every time the words rogue or feral came up, she drew back into herself. Until she worked it out and made herself sit straighter, pulled her chin up. Harley was strong. So strong. Possibly the most determined person he'd ever met. Most others would have moved far away and wallowed in self-pity. Harley didn't seem like a wallower at all. More contained. She's Matthias' sister. She's Matthias' sister. Matthias' sister. He chanted to himself all the way back to his office. He only wished he didn't have to remind himself so often. Chapter 14. Harley and Will spent the next couple of training sessions in the workout room instead of the clearing. Half of her was relieved Will wouldn't make her face the clearing for a bit. The other half was angry at herself for not facing the fear. The longer she waited to get back on the horse, the worse it would be. Will had moved her from regular exercises into actual self-defense. She liked it. It gave her more of a sense of progress than running circles. He cleared off some space in the workout room and now stood in the middle with her, his hand on her wrist. Okay, I've come at you from the front. I can see that. He stared at her blankly. Sorry. Continue. If someone ever grabs your wrist like this, you rotate your wrist. He waited until she'd done it before continuing. Good. Now bend your elbow and pull. She bent her elbow like he told her and pulled, but Will held on. Do you really think your opponent will let go if you barely use any strength? Frustrated, she yanked, throwing her body into it. Her hand came free, nearly sending her backward. If that doesn't work, Will said, flattening his hand and lightly placing the side below her ear, like a karate chop. Try to land a blow to their vagus nerve. It will incapacitate them. He showed her a few moves in case she was ever approached from behind and had her go through all of the moves over and over until she could do them in her sleep. By the time training finished up, her muscles ached. She'd done a lot of conditioning in the last week or so. However, these moves used muscles she didn't even know she had. Harley, though I've taught you this, you need to remember that the best option in any situation is to run if you can. Will said, you cause a distraction and then run. Then why spend time on this? His focus on her was steely, intense, for those times when running might not be an option. But whenever it is, you run. Got it. In other words, he'd gotten more details about the rogue from the other day and decided to remind her of the best option. Cam probably ratted her out. She let it flow right past her. Kim had told her to run. He tried to make the best of the situation. It wasn't his fault she decided to be a stubborn fool. Stretches. Will reminded her and sat on the ground with her as she put her heels together and pulled her ankles forward into a butterfly stretch. After a pause, what cleared his throat. How has work been? She smiled. The man at least got points for trying to small talk. Good. It's been an easy routine to settle. Will. Jamie appeared in the doorway. Dad needs to see you. Immediately. Harley didn't like the sound of that. Was there another trip in Will's future? He stood and was halfway to the door before he stopped and looked at her. Go ahead. She tried to give him her best encouraging expression, though it felt awkward and heavy on her face. I'll finish up here. Finding the answer good enough, he left, but not before warning her, make sure you do all of them. She rolled her eyes. Yeah, of course. General sir. Danny still stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression pinched. She glanced behind her once and stepped further into the room. Look. Haley Harley. Her eyes narrowed. Whatever. Harley. I know you think Will is amazing and everything, but don't get so cozy. Cozy. Harley echoed. What did that even mean? He's trained a lot of wolves around here. Damie said, just because he's giving you private lessons doesn't mean anything. Did she ever say anything about it meaning something? Though a small part of her flinched back. Well, giving her private lessons and then spending time with her had somehow started to mean something, whether she had realized it or not. Well, had started to mean a lot more than she wanted. She couldn't help it. He was kind and welcoming and didn't look at her with the pity most people did. And he was Matthias' friend. He was, however small, her closest connection to her family. Truth is, Jamie went on, he will never see you as anything more than a kid sister. Kid sister. It stung. Until now, Harley didn't realize just how much the thought of Will looking at her as a sibling would sting. I never. She trailed off, not sure what she wanted to say. Will has always looked out for others, Jamie said with a roll of her eyes. He protects those younger than him. It's practically in his DNA. So don't go thinking he's doing any of this for any other reason. And with that warning, she left, her words echoing through Harley's ears. Harley finished up her stretches and went back to her room to shower and get ready for work. The bus to town left at 11:30, which safely gave her an hour to get ready. Jamie's warning wouldn't leave her mind, even throughout work. As she helped customers and rang up exorbitant clothing purchases, she cursed herself. Of course, Will only trained her as a way to help out. In fact, it was Alpha Mark who had assigned him to train her in the first place. Will didn't put it upon himself to make sure the Latent could protect herself. She couldn't pinpoint when she'd started to want more, to expect more. It just kind of happened. Since the moment she'd walked into the kitchen and saw him at the sink with that cup in his hands and the grin on his lips, she'd noticed his handsomeness. But when had it become anything more than her acknowledging his looks? Was it when he discovered she was Latent and didn't freak out? Or when he helped her through the panic attack with calm clarity? Oh God, he probably did see her as nothing more than a little sister. Thank God she hadn't built up the courage to throw herself at him. Really, she hadn't done much of anything. Maybe a part of her knew it wasn't a good idea. Perhaps it was best Jamie told her. This way, she could rip off the hurt like a band-aid and proceed with her eyes open. On the bus ride home, she sat in one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs and pulled on her big girl pants. Will was a friend, and she would treat him as such. She nodded to herself. It would be better this way. She just had to make sure that she met his warm gaze. Outside, the world passed in a blur as the bus weaved through the town. Streetlights lit the interior of the bus in waves, in and out, like a lighthouse. June had come in with it. The heat and humidity swept through. She didn't much care for the cold, but didn't quite love heat either. Fortunately for her, Kensington rested in a temperate climate, which meant the summers weren't brutal. She quite liked the summers here. The nights were warm, often accompanied by a chill breeze. It made for a perfect reprieve from the hot sun. She glanced from the window to the guy across the aisle from her and met his gaze. Surprised, she couldn't help but stare. Why was he looking at her like that? The man, who couldn't be much younger than her, tilted his head to the side, recognition sparking. You're Harley. Right. There weren't many people on the bus. Heard the man across from her, a quiet man lost in his own world in the back, and a woman in the front whose anxious leg bouncing wouldn't quit. As such, she couldn't even pretend to ignore him. Yes, he released a dimpled grin. I thought so. His elbows rested on his knees as he leaned forward. My name's Ben. I'm Cam's brother. Really? Cam had a brother. Why hadn't he mentioned him to her? Yeah. He's talked about you once or twice. She liked Ben. He was bright and open, with caramel hair and a friendly smile. He didn't wave any red flags, despite it being dark out and her being alone on the public bus. Harley snorted. I don't know why. I'm not interesting. Ben's eyebrows came together. You seem interesting to me. She didn't know how 3 sentences made someone interesting, but she'd take his word for it. Where are you headed? Do you mind? He pointed to the seat next to her. Shaking her head, she scooped up her bag and sat it in her lap. Not at all. She caught a nice hint of cologne as he sat down. So where are you headed? She asked again. Ben's shoulder brushed hers. Still no warning bells in her head. In fact, she felt more comfortable having him next to her. Which was bizarre, because she'd not only never met the guy before, but they were on the public bus at night, which seemed like a terrible time to make friends. He just radiated this. Cone. I'm going to the house, he said. By the way he said house, she could tell he meant the pack house. No one called it the pack house in public. That was a severe way to get more attention than you wanted, usually in the form of confused glances. My brother and some of his friends are hanging out and invited me along. A pause. Then he said, you're welcome to come along if you'd like. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. She bit her lip. She wanted to hang out with pack members her age, though would that be imposing? Though Cam probably wouldn't care if she joined. You sure? Of course. Ben knocked his shoulder against hers. It'll be great. As the bus made its way to the last stop, Harley and Ben chatted like old friends. Ben was easy to talk to. Harley loved it. For once she wasn't thinking about anything but Ben and the conversation. With a whoosh and click, the bus grinned to a stop down the block from the house. The two walked the rest of the way to the pack house. Harley. Bailey split from the small group standing in the dim light of the porch and weaved her arm through Harley's. How was work? Good. And Ben's here too. Even in the heavy shadows. Bailey's grin sparkled. This girl always seemed to experience emotions at a brighter, stronger calibre. At the front of the house, Cam, Will, and Jamie waited for them. Cam snagged Ben around the neck and gave him a playful enoogie. Are you hitting on my ladies, little bro? Oh no, we were on the same busso. Ben pushed away and rubbed at his hair, irritation written all over him. I didn't know you had any siblings, Cam, Harley said. Cam grinned at Ben, but said to Harley, that's because I don't want them stealing my spotlight. We're heading off to Will's. Bailey piped in. Want to come? Harley? Automatically, Harley looked at Jamie, whose expression served as a reminder of their earlier conversation. I don't want to impose. Not at all. We'll twirl a set of keys. It'd be fun. Well, if he was sure, okay. Cool. Cam clapped and rubbed his hands together. We'll have to take 2 cars then. Who wants to ride with me? Jamie saddled up right next to Will. Harley, After a moment, worked her way to Ben's side. She needed the calm that he radiated. "Looks like I've got Ben and Harley," Cam said. They split off then to head to Will's for a night of fun. Excitement and tension filled Harley's frame. She was going to hang out with friends. This would be a step in the right direction for sure. Based on the warning look she got from Jamie's direction, she only hoped that this endeavor wouldn't be squashed before it even started. Chapter 15. Bailey laughed manically. "Hey, go suck a dick, Cam." The steady blush heated Harley's cheeks like a burner left on low. Bailey loved competition. That much had become obvious the second the group began playing video games, but so did Cam. The two had been smack-talking for the past hours, while one wasn't insulting the other's mom. The other threatened body parts. They had been playing a game, Mortal Kombat, ever since they walked through the door. The rule was, anytime someone lost, that person had to give up their controller since the game was geared for 2 players. Both Harley and Jamie, not as into video games, had decided to sit out on this one, which was fine. Harley liked to watch, though the rather graphic ways the characters died left her a little squeamish. Seeing someone rip the spinal cord from another character, freeze them, then shatter them into frozen chunks with their own spine would make anyone nauseous. "Who's next?" Bailey turned to the group sitting on Will's long gray U-shaped couch. Then, beside Harley, rubbed the back of his head. "I guess that's me. Bring it on, little one." Then snatched the controller from his older brother and muttered something about not being that much younger. But Bailey, sitting cross-legged near Will's rather large flat screen, either didn't hear him or didn't care. Harley, Will peered over at her from across the couch. "You sure you don't want to turn?" When they'd made themselves at home in Will's nice gray, toned living room, Harley had decided to go the safer route and chose a spot all the way at the other end of the couch on the reclining section. Then sat dutifully next to her with one of his kind grins. Meanwhile, Jamie put herself at a very close spot next to Will on the other side, her shoulder plastered onto Will's. She desperately tried to keep her attention on Bailey and her uninterrupted winning streak. But then she'd catch Will's deep green V, neck shirt and dark jeans and have to remind herself of all the reasons why liking Will was a bad idea. The biggest reason, Jamie's glares and pointed looks were brutally turned in her direction. She could practically feel the threatening demeanor Jamie cast in her direction since the moment she joined up on the event. Maybe Harley should have just stayed home. At least her books didn't promise her any more danger than a nasty paper cut. "I'm okay," she said. "I think I'll just watch." On her right, Ben leaned in closer, the warmth of his body a hot press to her side. Despite being tucked abnormally close into Ben, Harley didn't feel the urge to squirm away. If it were anyone else, she'd find a way to maintain distance. With Ben, there wasn't any awkwardness. "That's okay. I'll beat Bailey for the both of us." Bailey scoffed, as if, "Just because I'm an Omega doesn't mean I can't kick your ass," Ben said, then cringed as Bailey's character threw him across the screen. "Omega?" None of the others reacted to the word. In all her life living with Pax, she'd never come across the term. Did it stand for something? Or was it an inside joke? "Come on." Bailey tapped away at buttons. "I know you're better than this. Give me a real challenge. I'm trying. Damn it." Ben's button tapping came faster than Bailey's as he tried to escape her hold. "So Will, Jamie broke in. Dad says you snagged one of those rogues during your trip. You think he'll give you much?" Harley barely flinched. He'd actually got one of them, but he told her nothing really happened. Why did Jamie get to know? Who was she kidding? Of course Jamie knew. As the Alpha's daughter, she was important to the pack. Already, the list stacked in her favor. She wasn't some quiet, boring orphan with anxiety issues. Almost Jamie. Will said, almost snagged. Cam swirled his beer bottle, peering down at the contents. If he'd gotten one of them, he'd be in a hell of a better mood. Shove off, Cam. Cam smirked and took a sip. I'm just saying. I wouldn't worry, though. Alpha Mark's been bragging about you since the moment you finished your training. You could blow up the pack house, and he'd still think you walked on water. Blow up the pack house. Will's attention shot straight to Harley. She gave him the most reassuring smile she could and waved it off. Cam, as if just realizing what he'd said, froze and looked to her. Sorry, Harley. She made herself roll her eyes. Despite her sore stomach, you guys worry too much. Will frowned as if he didn't believe her mock bravado and opened his mouth to speak. But Jamie beat him to it. Yeah, guys, it's not like saying blow up is a trigger. Give the girl more credit. Then Jamie launched into a detailed story about her friend, Natasha, who often constructed bombs for fun using household items. Not anything serious, of course, she assured. Just little explosions in her backyard. When the story was over, turns out Natasha was in JUVIE. Alcan gave a long sigh and glanced down at his relatively empty beer on the dark wood coffee table. I need another beer. Will, draining the remainder of his. Put a finger up. I got it. Anyone else? Jamie wiggled hers with 2 fingers. Me. Despite being enraged, Jamie had been happy to join in on the alcohol consumption with Will and Cam. Harley, on the other hand, couldn't get far enough away from the stuff. It tasted horrible. Besides, having an aversion to the wheat wine nastiness wouldn't be the worst thing ever. Will stood up and snagged Cam's now empty bottle. Harley, help me out for a second. She didn't think he really needed help grabbing a couple of beers, but it gave her something to do. She hopped up. Sure. She trailed Will past the archway and into the next room. Of all the rooms of Will's house she'd seen so far, the kitchen was by far the best. All the cabinets had been painted white to contrast the black granite countertops. The island in the middle gave him a place to entertain while he cooked. All his guests could then sit at the little four-person table in the nook that overlooked the backyard. For such a young guy, Will had a decent amount of money. Your house is very nice, Will, Harley said. Will grabbed a few beers and popped the tops off with a bottle opener from one of the drawers. Chink, 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 thanks. It's not much, there are only 2 bedrooms, but it served its purpose. Did you decorate it yourself? His teeth flashed as he laughed. Are you kidding? I can barely match up my clothes. Really? Because he seemed to be doing a great job so far. Bailey did it for me. Bailey. He rested his forearms on the island and leaned forward, closer to her, his cologne teasing her nose. Bailey likes to downplay herself. She's got a lot of talent in that skinny body, though she'd die before she admitted it. Which is why I like to tell everyone I can of all of her accomplishments. She made a note to ask Bailey later about her experience with interior design. Harley, are you sure he cut himself off? Never mind. What? He stared at her for a moment and she had to resist squirming under his gaze. The room felt warmer, her cheeks hotter. Finally, he asked, are you happy? It was completely out of left field. Was she happy? Definitely more than this time last year. Last year she'd been stuck with her Aunt Tracy and Uncle Eric, working her ass off. Last year she had half the amount of friends, if they could be considered that. She was happy. Just maybe not in the way Will meant it. I am. She lied. Then, to try and convince herself, I'm in a good place. With good people. If Will caught her lie, he didn't say anything about it. He nodded. Good. Would you like a drink? He asked. I've got soda. Milk. Water. Soda would be nice. Harley bit at her lip while got her a soda. Will. What's an omega? With a whoosh and click, the soda opened. Will poured it into a glass. An omega. I'm surprised you haven't come heard of them yet. Them? So there were many. No one's ever talked about them near me. Omega are rare, Will explained. Probably 1 in 1. 0 wolf shifters are Omega, which is why they aren't talked about as much. Some don't even believe they exist. What makes them different? He chuckled once. They make you calm, for lack of a better explanation. Make you calm. What the hell did that mean? They are less likely to become violent, less likely to go feral, and soothe all the wolves around them. It's why Ben has a million friends in this pack, and also why he has a lot of people ready to spill blood for him. That's why she felt the way she did around Ben, but she wasn't even really a wolf. How was that possible? Dominant wolves love an omega. They are the cooling to their fire. In the old days, Omega were assistants to healers, used like a sedative for injured wolves, though Omega were more common then. Can Latent feel the Omega's ability? Will slid the glass over to her and crossed his arms over his chest. Honestly, I'm not sure. Latent tests are even more rare than Omega. In all the research I've done so far, it hasn't said anything about not feeling the Omega's effects. He cocked his head. Is that why you're gravitating towards Ben? I will, Jamie called out. What's taking so long? Will's focus never left her. Coming. Let's go. I didn't come over so you could annoy your guest. With a deep breath, Will picked up the beers by the nozzles in one hand and gave her a gentle pat on the shoulder as he left. Will, vampire deception. I Drake Mason and EY Gwet, by the undocumented tiefling and forced to pose as a low-level witch. Harley bit her lip as he turned back. Thank you. For doing research. I mean. His eyes crinkled at the corners. Anytime. After Bailey kicked ass in Mortal Kombat a couple more times, the group decided to switch over to a movie. Cam and Bailey fought over an action flick, while Jamie bartered for a romantic comedy. Harley didn't care either way, her eyes already felt like solid weights. In fact, she didn't pay attention to what movie was picked. 15 minutes in, her head, propped on her hand, started to loll to the side. The exhaustion of training and working a full shift set in. She drifted off. Distant voices tried to drag her from solid sleep. Don't worry about it. Get her home tomorrow. No trouble. Be fine. Training tomorrow morning anyway. But Will, go home, Jamie. Strong arms pulled her from the corner of the couch. She woke, but her eyes were so heavy. Back to sleep. She just needed more sleep. The warm body near her laid her down on a cozy surface. A blanket wrapped around her. She settled in and slept. Chapter 16. Her feet pounded against the dry earth. Run they LL get you. Her breaths came out in wheezing gasps as the fingers of trees slashed against her arms. The world blurred around her. Run behind her, a sharp bark and burst of movement. She just had to go away. Anywhere but here. How long could she keep going? Already she tasted iron. In the distance, the peak of her home stuck out from the canopy of trees. Her parents had it built near the edge of the territory by where the trees were thin. It made it easy to spot among the deep brush. Run, get home. You'll be safe at home. Nothing can hurt you there. A low growl. The creature behind her mirrored her frantic pace, too close. She didn't have much time. The wolf had the advantage. She only ran onto legs and had no extra speed. If she didn't get home now, she'd be dead soon. She pushed her feet faster. Her house, a tiny brown and white cottage, grew bigger and bigger. She could see the rickety front porch where Dad sat in the morning to drink his coffee. The half-filled flower beds with Mom's tools resting nearby. Matthias' bike abandoned next to a tree. She was going to make it. Relief swelled, and the house burst apart. The panic hit her first, followed by horror and gut-wrenching emotional pain. Screaming. She was screaming. Her parents were in there. They slammed into her and ripped viciously through her chest. Her legs wouldn't carry any longer, and she fell to the ground. Let the monster rip her to shreds. She didn't care. Screaming. Her throat hurt, but God help her, she couldn't stop. It wouldn't be until later that she'd realize the wolf chasing her disappeared with the explosion. Harley woke. The floor and ceiling above her was tall, vaulted, unlike her room at the pack house. The surface holding her was not her bed, but rather a couch. A light blanket cocooned around her. The sun must have started to rise as it cast muted light over the room. Will's house. She was at Will's, and only God knows what time it was. In the kitchen, Will stood at the coffee pot, shoveling coffee into a paper filter. Will, what are you doing up? The clock on the wall said a little past 5. He turned, though if she'd caught him by surprise he didn't show it. I couldn't sleep. His voice was low, a bit husky from lack of use. She imagined the terror sweeping through his brain at night. Unlike her, his mental images would only keep appearing. It was a wonder the man slept at all. You look like you couldn't either, he said, the sweat of the nightmare still stuck to her skin. She would need a shower to truly get past it. Showers had a way of making her feel brand new, inside and out. Luckily for her, Will had opened the picture window above the sink, and the cool, gentle breeze felt amazing against her clammy skin. Coffee. After a wide, stretching yawn, she nodded, then set herself up at the island. While the coffee percolated, Will fiddled around with the contents of his fridge. Is it always like this? She asked. For me, yes. He stuck his head in the fridge while poking around at stuff in the back. Harley tried not to stare at him. He looked good in navy track pants and a dark gray t-shirt. When you're in my line of work, you learn to live without sleep. How could one person do that? She loved sleep. Loved. Truly. It was the gift from the gods. Is it hard, being a hunter? He pulled out half a gallon of milk, eggs, bacon, and butter. At the question, he peered over his shoulder. It has its ups and downs, I suppose. More ups. That guy was born a protector. Camp had said, some wolves just are. Everything about Will was protection. She saw it now in the way he looked her over, as if he was deciding whether her lack of sleep involved something he could fight or not. It almost made her smile. What had made him this way? Maybe it was his parents. Maybe they'd emphasized the importance of keeping others safe. So he'd never had someone in the family to watch out for. Do you ever get a break? He shrugged, then got to making whatever it was he decided he needed at 5 a.m. Sometimes, if we were ever in a peaceful time, but I didn't sign on for the salary, so. She snorted quite unattractively. Your salary seems pretty nice, though. He mixed something in a bowl on the counter, then took out a pan to put on the stove. I can't complain. It worries me, she admitted, that you go out and risk your life like that. Harley wouldn't want anyone to have to go through the type of pain she had. If she'd known far enough in advance, if her parents had any idea of what would have happened that day, they'd have run. Escaped. Yet here Will was running toward that kind of danger, and he did it all the time. Will's hands slowed. He turned, a resigned expression on his face. Someone has to do it. If not me, probably Cam. Or, I'm a good fighter. Harley, trust me. I do a lot of work around here so that you and the pack can have a safe home. He leaned over the countertop, his face close enough that Harley could see the dark stubble along his jaw. Even so, movement flickered in the window. Her breath caught. Will. Will's backyard wasn't much more than a large patch of grass sloping downhill. Tall trees with heaping trunks and wide branches lined the property. In the back, at the bottom of the hill, sat Tan and White Wolf, the Tan and White Wolf from before. It was so still it looked like the kind of statue put in yards to scare critters away. Its eyes looked right through the window at them. It's just standing there, she said in a breathy whisper. Why is it just standing there? I don't know. What do we do? Will frowned. For now, nothing. He hasn't given us any threat. See his eyes. He's aware, not feral. I wouldn't doubt he can hear us. Something about the wolf had Harley's skin itching. Strangely not in a bad way. I don't think he wants to hurt anyone. If he's still in his right mind, why is he watching us? Will's frown deepened. He didn't know. Harley had no doubt he'd never experienced this before. Will was often sent out after the danger made itself known to others, not before whatever this was. Hello, Harley said at a normal volume. Maybe it wanted something. Maybe it was lost. She supposed wolves could get lost like any other animal. The wolf cocked his head, and the light caught on a scar along his neck she missed before. A long line ran from his jaw to where his shoulders started. The fur barely grew around it, so it couldn't be covered up. Harley, let's not talk to. You don't mean to hurt anyone, do you? She asked over Will. Are you lost? The wolf shook out his fur in response. I think he wants us to go out there, Harley told Will. That's a terrible idea. As much as strained wolves scared her, and the way her heart pounded, they definitely scared her. She didn't think this one would do anything. He hadn't the last time. Once he'd shook himself from scary wolf mode. He looked ashamed, as if he didn't mean to scare her and Cam. Are you sure he's not feral? He's not, Will said. A feral wolf wouldn't sit like that for so long. How long had he sat there before they noticed? Then maybe the wolf shook his head again, almost wildly, like he had something on his head. As they watched, the wolf looked around, his fur raising, teeth exposed at something near the side of the house, and bolted. Will, he's in attack mode now. He picked up a landmine on the wall and put in some numbers. We've got a foreign on the territory, yes. No, I just saw it in my backyard, heading toward the pack house. Grab Oliver and I'll meet you there in 15. Are you going to catch it? She asked once he hung up. Will flipped off the stove and started rapidly putting stuff away. If necessary, I want to track it, see where it goes and if it has a routine. Wouldn't it be best to go now? As much as Harley hated the idea, it would make sense for Will to follow it on foot as soon as possible. If the trail settles a bit, I'll be able to track him to wherever he's staying. Obviously, he's hanging out somewhere close. We have to figure out where that is. You're not going to hurt him, though. She needed confirmation that he wasn't just going to kill it because it might pose a threat. She liked to think all wolves were innocent until proven guilty. In the middle of rinsing out a cup, he stopped, staring at the running water. He said, "Not unless I have to, but he can't stay here on pack land." He put the cup on the drying rack. I'll drop you off at the pack house. Can you be ready in 10 minutes? All she had were the jeans and shirt she wore yesterday and her crossbody purse. No problem. While Will went off to get ready, Harley went to the bathroom, did her business, and rinsed her mouth out with water. She had to wait to do more until she got back to the pack house. Lucky for her, it was only 5:30 in the morning. The sun was just rising and there wouldn't be many people walking around the pack house that early. No one would see her rumpled clothes and disheveled hair. Even so, she combed through her brown locks with her fingers. It would have to be enough. Please don't let anyone get hurt, she whispered to the mirror, then left to find Will. Later that day, Jamie Kensington was an average-sized town with a mediocre shopping center. The mall struggled to keep shops open and customers filing in. If anyone wanted to do any real shopping besides the department stores, they had to go down the road to the plaza 3 blocks over. Since Jamie didn't much care for the department stores, she often visited the plaza. Her favorite boutique rested there, nuzzled between a bakery and Kensington's only frozen yogurt shop. With her phone tight to her ear, she stepped into Selena's boutique. Air conditioning raced over her in a cool, intense wave. She sighed in relief. With the end of June fast approaching, the humidity steadily rose. The town wouldn't expect the temperatures to mellow out until mid-August. Even with the overcast sky, the air was hot and sticky. At least the heat gave her a reason to wear her favorite pair of Daisy Dukes with the lace along the edges. "I thought you said Harley was a quiet nobody," Beth, her best friend, said in her ear. Jamie could throttle Harley. Ever since she'd moved in, nothing had been the same. Instead of being concerned for her, her dad had asked Harley, "Or have you checked up on Harley? And are you and Harley getting along?" As if she spent much time with the girl in the first place. She was sick of it. The pack seemed to go out of their way for the damn girl. Natalie always saved breakfast for her. Cam couldn't stop trying to suggest they bring her along on things. And even Bailey talked about her incessantly. Just to get out of the house, Jamie decided to head into town to do some shopping therapy. All she knew was if she didn't get out soon, she'd have an aneurysm. She did it again last night. Beth butted in. Yes, she wanted to scream the word. "I was all set to hang out at Will's when she just showed up." Whoa, not cool. Did she invite herself along? Might as well have. She showed up with Ben. Jamie scoured the racks as she spoke, flipping through dress after dress. "I call you, this green one looked like ruffled snot." "I thought you said you were hanging out with Will alone," Beth said, confused. The best thing about Beth was her ability to take everything Jamie said at face value and not question it. That was in the best friend code after all, even when your friend is wrong. She's right. Well, Cam was there. And Bailey. Cam is just a wingman, a very sexy wingman. Jamie rolled her eyes. And Bailey might as well be a boy. She pulled out a baby blue halter dress, scowled at it, and put it back. Red was her color. If she could find that dress in red, Bailey is one of the guys. Beth said, "I feel bad." You can tell she likes Cam. I don't think she knows what to do about it. Not that he'd see her that way anyway. Cam's a block when it comes to those things. Beth, focus. Sorry. Frustrated. Jamie decided her grand shopping adventure would have to be another day. She left the store. The gray clouds outside looked threatening. If the sky opened up while she was out, that'd just be another wonderful thing to happen this week. She had been practically wrapped around her finger too. What about Will? I got him away from her. Mostly. I didn't stop him from ogling her across the room. Beth, I have worked too hard to get Will to like me to have little Miss Poor Me. I lost my family to ruin it. Jamie parked her car down the block. She balanced her phone between her ear and shoulder to snag her keys from her white leather purse. She's gotta have some kind of weakness. Beth said, where were her effing keys? She tried to focus on the sidewalk so as not to trip on the jutting cracks here and there while also blindly feeling around for the blocky key fob. Harley isn't even interesting. She growled into the phone. She's one of the most boring people I've met. All she does is read. Then what is it Will likes about her? There. She pulled out her black key fob and clicked the unlock button. A few yards away, her silver sedan beeped. I don't effing know. The girl is latent. She can't even go wolf. Something slammed into her shoulder. Her phone clattered to the ground. Great. Just great. Watch where you're going. Some average-looking middle-aged man reached down for her phone and handed it back. My apologies, miss. Jamie snatched it up and gave him a look. Yeah, whatever. Beth, you still there? She walked off. Blackthorn marched his way to the center of the camp and the large tent there. His breath came out in gasps and sweat dripped down his back, but he'd be damned if he let that stop him. He stomped to the tent and yanked open the flaps of the door. Honey, I'm home, he called out, grinning especially as Celine threw him an irritated glance. She sat at her work table, going over once again those damn papers. She was wasting her time, and pure glee bubbled up in him because he was the one that got to break it to her. Blackthorn, don't you have any semblance of respect? She shuffled the papers together and stuffed them into a file folder, then clasped her hands together. God, this woman irritated him. Always so damn proper when she wasn't looking like an avenging angel. The fact that the woman had a face and body to die for only pissed him off more. Why have respect when you can have a breakthrough instead? The last breakthrough you had was shit and you know it. Yeah, he wasn't too proud of his storm the place idea either. No matter, he'd actually done something great this time. Guess who has 2 thumbs and knows something you don't? Finish that joke and you'll have no thumbs and no physical way to continue reproducing. Ouch. Right for the nads then. Looked like Little Miss Sunshine wasn't in a sunny mood today. Spit it out. Blackthorn. He sighed. He just didn't get people who didn't like a little humor. Fine. I'll tell you the boring version. I was doing some recon. I told you that lead was dead. She cut him off and stood up, telling him through tight teeth that, if you can't start listening to directions, I'll have you cut loose so fast you'll. I'm all for following rules. Not really, but this time it was worth it. After a moment in which Celine silently seethed, she spit out, Continue. I spent some time in the town near Drive. Pierce's home and found out, by a stroke of luck really, that little Miz. Pierce had a smelly secret, and how pray tell did you find that out? He waved a hand, as if shooing the question away. Just some skinny pack girl talking on the phone, thinking no one's listening. That's not important, but get this, Harley Pierce is latent. Latent. It means, oh great and powerful one, that Harley Pierce doesn't shift. His smug smile continued to grow as Celine practically fell back into her chair. He waited while it sunk in. Surprise highlighted her face. She doesn't shift. She whispered more to herself. Nope. An honest, too, god-wolf girl without a wolf. He did. She muttered. That bastard actually did it. Then, she snapped into the commander role. Get Morgan. We've got much work to do. Thank you so much for joining me in this obsession with werewolves. I hope you've had a great time and can't wait to come back for more. Remember to subscribe, leave your comments, and share this passion with others. Until next time, keep being obsessed.